My name is Daniel Hayes, and if someone had told me 5 years ago that my best friend would marry my wife, I would have laughed in their face. Not because I thought my marriage was perfect, but because I trusted them both more than anyone else. I met Ethan Brooks during my freshman year of college. We survived impossible professors, lived in the same apartment after graduation, and even landed our first jobs in the same city. He wasn't just my best friend, he was the brother I never had. When I married Olivia, Ethan stood beside me as my best man. I still remember him raising his glass at our wedding. To Daniel and Olivia, he said with a smile, "May your love outlast all of us." Everyone cheered. I cheered too. Funny how life works. For almost 10 years, I believed I had everything a man could want. A beautiful wife. A comfortable house. Stable work managing construction projects. Friends who felt like family. Were we rich? Not even close. But we paid the bills, took one vacation every summer, and talked about having children once we felt more financially secure. At least, I thought we talked about the same future. The truth was that Olivia had started dreaming about a completely different life. It happened slowly. She became obsessed with social media, luxury vacations, designer clothes, million-dollar homes. Every evening she scrolled through photos of influencers. "Look at this house," she'd say. "Can you imagine living like that?" "I'd love that," I'd answer. "Maybe one day." She would sigh. "You always say, one day." At first, I thought she was just dreaming. Then the comments started. "You work too much. You don't make enough. When are you finally going to become successful?" Every sentence felt like another brick added to the wall growing between us. Ironically, she had no idea what I was secretly working on. For nearly 2 years, I'd been saving every spare dollar while designing a plan to start my own real estate development company. I didn't tell many people. Only one. Ethan. We met every Friday after work. I'd show him blueprints, business projections, investment ideas. He always encouraged me. "You've got this. I believe in you. You're smarter than every developer in this city." Hearing that from my best friend meant everything. Looking back now, maybe I should have wondered why he never encouraged Olivia to believe in me too. One Friday evening, after another meeting, Ethan put a hand on my shoulder. "You need to tell Olivia." "I will," I said. "I just want everything ready first." "You don't want to disappoint her." "Exactly. I wanted to surprise her." I imagined handing her the business registration papers. Watching her smile. Hearing her say she was proud of me. Instead, everything fell apart before I ever had the chance. The first sign came on a rainy Tuesday. I got home almost an hour earlier than usual because a client canceled our meeting. Olivia's car was in the driveway. So was Ethan's truck. I smiled. They were probably planning my birthday. At least, that's what I convinced myself as I walked toward the front door. I reached for the handle. Then I heard laughter coming from upstairs. Not ordinary laughter. The kind shared by two people who believed they were completely alone. I froze. Without knowing it, I had just walked toward the moment that would destroy the life I thought I had, and unknowingly begin building a much better one. My hand stayed on the doorknob for several seconds. I wanted to believe there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe Ethan had stopped by to help Olivia move furniture. Maybe they were planning a surprise party. Maybe I was overthinking everything. Then I heard her voice. Soft. Playful. The same voice she hadn't used with me in months. "I can't believe he's still clueless." Ethan laughed. "He trusts us too much." Something inside me broke before I even opened the door. I walked in quietly. The house was almost silent except for their conversation upstairs. Each step felt heavier than the last. When I reached our bedroom, the door wasn't completely closed. I pushed it open. Neither of them noticed me at first. Olivia was sitting on the edge of our bed. Ethan stood in front of her, kissing her. My best friend. My wife. In my house. On the bed we had bought together. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Then Olivia turned her head. The color disappeared from her face. Daniel. Ethan spun around so quickly he nearly lost his balance. It's not what? Don't, I interrupted. I've seen enough. The room fell completely silent. I expected shouting. Excuses. Maybe even tears. Instead, Olivia slowly stood up and crossed her arms. You were going to find out eventually. Those words hurt more than anything. Not because she betrayed me. Because she'd already decided our marriage was over. Without telling me. Without giving me a chance. How long? I asked. She looked at Ethan before answering. About 8 months. 8 months. 8 months of dinners together. Family barbecues. Football games. Birthday parties. 8 months of smiling in my face while lying every single day. I looked at Ethan. Was any of our friendship real? He couldn't even meet my eyes. I'm sorry. That was it. 2 words. 20 years of friendship reduced to 2 meaningless words. Olivia walked toward the closet. I've actually been packing some things. I stared at her. You planned this? She nodded. I wasn't happy anymore. You could have divorced me. I will. Her calmness shocked me. She acted like she was discussing the weather. Then she said something I'll never forget. You've always been comfortable being average, Daniel. Average. That single word echoed through my mind. I want more from life, she continued. Ethan isn't afraid to take risks. I almost laughed. If only she knew. Everything Ethan had told her about ambition. Everything he knew about business. He had learned from me. Because I had trusted him with every plan. Every investment idea. Every dream. He had never built anything himself. He simply borrowed my confidence while stealing my wife. I walked downstairs without another word. Neither of them tried to stop me. Outside, the rain had become heavier. I sat in my car for nearly an hour, staring through the windshield. I wasn't crying anymore. I was empty. Eventually my phone rang. It was Marcus. You still coming to dinner? I almost ignored the call. Instead, I answered. No. He immediately noticed something was wrong. What happened? I looked back at my house. At the upstairs bedroom window where the lights were still on. My marriage just ended. Marcus didn't ask questions. He simply said 5 words that changed everything. Come over. You're not alone. At that moment, I thought I had lost everything. I had no idea that the people who betrayed me were about to make the biggest mistake of their lives. Marcus opened the front door before I even knocked. One look at my face was enough. He didn't ask for details. He just pulled me into a hug and said, "The guest room is yours for as long as you need it." That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan standing in my bedroom. Every memory from the last 8 months suddenly felt fake. Every family dinner. Every football game. Every laugh. Had they been laughing at me the entire time? The next morning, Marcus made coffee and finally asked, "Do you want to tell me?" I told him everything. From finding them together to Olivia calling me average. When I finished, he sat quietly for a moment. Then he surprised me. "I've been waiting for this." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Marcus sighed. I didn't know they were having an affair. But I knew something wasn't right. He explained that over the past year Ethan had started acting differently whenever Olivia was around. Long conversations. Private jokes. The kind of body language most people ignored. Marcus had considered warning me several times. But I had no proof, he said. And I didn't want to destroy your marriage based on a feeling. I couldn't blame him. I hadn't seen it either. A week later, Olivia officially asked for a divorce. There was no argument over the house. No fight about furniture. No dramatic courtroom scenes. She wanted a quick ending. Almost like she couldn't wait to start her new life. 3 months later, she married Ethan. I found out through social media. Hundreds of smiling photos. Beach wedding. Luxury resort. Perfect couple. The comments were even worse. You two were meant to be together. Relationship goals. True love always wins. I closed the app and never opened it again. That same evening, Marcus came over carrying a folder. Remember those business plans you showed me? I nodded. I've been thinking. He placed the folder on my kitchen table. I want in. I looked at him in confusion. You've got the experience. I've got some savings. Together, we can make this happen. I laughed bitterly. My life just fell apart. So build a new one. It isn't that simple. No, Marcus replied. It's harder than that. But you're still breathing. That means you're not finished. For the first time in months, I felt something other than anger. Hope. We spent the next several weeks rewriting my business plan from scratch. We studied the local market. Met with banks. Talked to investors. Most of them rejected us. Some laughed. One banker actually said, starting a development company during this market? You're dreaming. Maybe we were. But dreams were all I had left. 6 months after my divorce became final, I signed the papers to register Hayes Development Group. The office? One tiny rented room above an auto repair shop. The furniture? Second-hand desks. The conference table? Marcus found it on an online marketplace. We couldn't even afford a company sign. Still, when I looked at that business license hanging on the wall, I smiled. Because for the first time in a long time, my future belonged to me. I didn't know it yet, but while I was building my company from almost nothing, Ethan and Olivia were already beginning to destroy everything they thought they had gained. The first 2 years were brutal. There were weeks when Marcus and I worked nearly 18 hours a day. During the day, we searched for abandoned properties, met with contractors, and pitched investors. At night, we handled paperwork because we couldn't afford assistants. More than once, I wondered if Olivia had been right. Maybe I really was chasing an impossible dream. Then our first breakthrough came. A retired investor named Harold Whitman agreed to meet with us after 3 other firms had turned him down. He listened to my presentation without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. You know, he said, every successful developer I've backed had one thing in common. I waited. They'd already been told they were going to fail. A week later, Harold invested enough money for us to purchase our first neglected apartment building. It wasn't glamorous. The roof leaked. Half the units were empty. The plumbing was ancient. Most investors wouldn't touch it. I saw opportunity. For 6 exhausting months, our team renovated every apartment. We fixed broken elevators. Replaced old wiring. Added security cameras and modern landscaping. When the project was finished, every unit was rented within weeks. For the first time, our company made a real profit. Then another opportunity appeared. And another. Each completed project led to a larger one. By the 4th year, Hayes Development Group had grown from 2 people in a tiny office to more than 60 employees. We weren't the biggest company in the city. But people had started noticing us. One afternoon Marcus walked into my office carrying a newspaper. He tossed it onto my desk with a grin. "Look at page 3. There was a full-page article about local businesses transforming abandoned neighborhoods. Right in the center was my picture. The headline read, "Local developer revitalizes forgotten communities." I stared at it for a long moment. Not because I cared about the publicity. Because I remembered Olivia calling me average. Marcus laughed. "Think she'll see it?" "I'm sure she will." "Does it matter?" I looked out the window. No. And surprisingly, I meant it. Months later, our financial director, Nathan Cole, entered my office with another proposal. "I think you'll like this one." He slid a thick folder across my desk. Inside were photos of a large apartment complex on the east side of the city. The buildings were old but structurally solid. Nearly 200 units. Excellent location. Poor management. "Why is the owner selling?" I asked. Nathan smiled. "They've run out of money." I spent the next several days reviewing inspection reports, financial records, and renovation estimates. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. If we managed it correctly, this could become the biggest investment our company had ever made. Marcus looked at me across the conference table. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" I smiled. "We're buying it." Neither of us knew that this single purchase would bring my past crashing back into my present. Because hidden among nearly 200 tenants were 2 names I never expected to see again. Closing the deal took almost 3 months. Lawyers reviewed contracts. Inspectors checked every building. Banks approved financing. By the time the final documents were signed, Hayes Development Group officially owned the largest apartment complex we had ever purchased. I wanted to inspect the property myself. Not because I didn't trust my team. Because I never asked people to do work I wasn't willing to do. The complex had potential. Fresh paint. New landscaping. Modern security. Updated apartments. Within 2 years, it could become one of the best residential communities in the city. As I walked through the property with Sophia Bennett, the complex manager, she explained which buildings needed immediate repairs. Building C needs a new roof. Parking lot lighting should be replaced. A few tenants are behind on rent. I nodded while making notes. Everything sounded manageable. Before leaving, Sophia handed me a thick folder. "These are the current tenant records. I'll review them tonight." Back at the office, I poured myself a cup of coffee and started reading. Most names meant nothing to me. Families. College students. Retired couples. Young professionals. Then I stopped turning pages. Apartment 4B. Ethan Brooks. For a second, I thought I had imagined it. I looked again. There it was. Directly beneath his name was another. Olivia Brooks. She had taken his last name. I leaned back in my chair. 5 years. 5 years without seeing either of them. And somehow, they were living in my building. Marcus walked into my office a few minutes later. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Without saying a word, I slid the folder across the desk. He read the names. His eyebrows shot up. "No way." I nodded slowly. "They're tenants." Marcus let out a quiet whistle. "Do they know?" "I doubt it." He looked at me carefully. "What are you going to do?" I already knew my answer. "Nothing." "Nothing?" "They signed a legal lease before we bought the property. They'll be treated exactly like every other resident." Marcus studied my face for a moment. "I believe you." And I meant it. I had spent years rebuilding my life. I wasn't about to throw that away for revenge. A week later, Sophia called me. "We've got a situation." "What happened?" "Apartment 4B requested an emergency meeting with the property owner." I stayed silent. "They're 3 months behind on rent," she continued. "They've already received multiple notices from the previous owner." "What do they want?" "They say they recently lost their primary income and need more time." Primary income. That could only mean Ethan had lost his job. Sophia kept talking. "I told them the new owner would decide personally." I looked through my office window at the city skyline. "What time is the meeting?" "Tomorrow morning. 10 o'clock. After hanging up, I sat quietly for several minutes. Life had a strange sense of humor. For years, I had imagined what I would say if I ever saw them again. Now I wasn't sure I wanted to say anything at all. The next morning, I arrived early. At 9:55, Sophia knocked on my office door. "They're here." I straightened my jacket. "Send them in." A few seconds later, the door opened. Ethan walked in first. Olivia followed behind him. Both looked older. More tired. The confidence they once carried had disappeared. Neither of them looked up immediately. Then Ethan raised his eyes. The color drained from his face. Olivia froze beside him. For several long seconds, no one spoke. Finally, I broke the silence. "Good morning. Please. Have a seat." Neither of them moved. Ethan stared at me as if he had seen a ghost. Olivia looked from me to the nameplate on my desk. Daniel Hayes. Founder and CEO, Hayes Development Group. Her lips parted slightly. This is your company?" I nodded. "Yes." She slowly sat down, still unable to take her eyes off me. Ethan remained standing. I didn't know. I figured. The room fell silent again. Sophia quietly excused herself and closed the door behind her, leaving the three of us alone for the first time in 5 years. Ethan finally sat down. "I guess congratulations are in order." "Thank you." He forced a weak smile. "You've done well." "I've worked hard." No one argued with that. Olivia looked around my office. Large windows overlooked the city skyline. Architectural models filled the shelves. Awards from local business organizations lined one wall. Everything she had once said I would never achieve was sitting right in front of her. She lowered her eyes. "We're here because..." "I know why you're here." I opened their file. 3 months behind on rent. Neither of them said anything. I continued reading. "Ethan, you were laid off 6 months ago." He nodded. "The company downsized." "And Olivia?" She swallowed. "My marketing job ended last year." "What happened?" She hesitated. "The company closed." I closed the folder. "So you've both been looking for work?" "Yes." There was no anger in my voice. No satisfaction. Just facts. Ethan took a deep breath. "I know we don't deserve any favors." "No," I replied honestly. "We probably don't," he admitted. For the first time since they entered the office, I saw genuine shame on his face. Not embarrassment at being poor. Shame for what he had done. Olivia looked at me with watery eyes. "I've wanted to apologize for years." I remained silent. She continued. "I convinced myself I made the right decision." Her voice cracked. But after a while, everything started falling apart. She explained that Ethan had lost 2 different jobs. Medical bills from an unexpected surgery had drained their savings. Credit card debt piled up. The expensive lifestyle they had once chased disappeared almost overnight. We kept telling ourselves things would get better, she whispered. They never did. I listened without interrupting. 5 years ago, I had imagined this moment differently. I thought I'd enjoy seeing them struggle. Instead, I mostly felt tired. Marcus had once told me something I never forgot. The opposite of hate isn't love. It's indifference. Maybe he had been right. Ethan cleared his throat. If you decide to evict us, we'll understand. I leaned back in my chair. You signed a 1-year lease. He nodded. I intend to honor it. Both of them looked confused. I'm not throwing you out. Olivia blinked. What? You'll stay under the same terms as every other tenant. For the first time, relief appeared on their faces. Then I added one more sentence. But that doesn't solve your real problem. They looked at me. You don't need charity. You need jobs. Neither of them spoke. I slid 2 business cards across the table. One belonged to a warehouse manager I trusted. The other belonged to a local customer service company that was hiring. I can't hire either of you. But I can recommend you to people who owe me favors. Olivia stared at the cards. You do that, after everything? I smiled faintly. I'm not doing it for you. They waited. I'm doing it for the man I refuse to become. Neither of them had an answer. As they quietly stood to leave, Ethan stopped at the door. Without turning around, he said 4 words I never expected to hear. I envied you, Daniel. Ethan's words hung in the air. I envied you, Daniel. He finally turned to face me. For years. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to argue about. He took a slow breath. You always thought I had more confidence than you. He gave a bitter laugh. The truth is, I borrowed yours. Olivia looked at him in surprise. He continued. When you showed me your business plans, I was impressed. But after a while, I became jealous. He rubbed his hands together nervously. You had ideas. You had discipline. You knew exactly what you wanted. And I didn't. I remembered all those Friday evenings. The notebooks. The blueprints. The conversations over burgers and cheap beer. I had trusted him with every dream I had. I started telling myself you didn't deserve what you had, Ethan admitted. Your marriage. Your future. Your confidence. It became easier to convince myself that if Olivia chose me, somehow I'd finally be the winner. The office fell silent. He shook his head. I wasn't. Olivia wiped away a tear. I wasn't either. She looked directly at me. I spent years blaming you because it was easier than admitting I was unhappy with myself. I thought a different man would give me a different life. She smiled sadly. I didn't realize that I was carrying my own problems with me. For the first time since they walked into my office, I believed they were telling the truth. Not because they wanted something from me. Because they had already lost everything that pretending had given them. After they left, Marcus walked into my office. How'd it go? I told him everything. Including the job referrals. He raised an eyebrow. You surprised me. Why? I thought you'd enjoy watching them suffer. So did I. Marcus sat across from me. Do you regret helping them? I looked out the window. No. I spent 5 years proving I wasn't the man they thought I was. I'm not about to become someone I don't respect. Marcus smiled. That's why your company keeps growing. A few months passed. Business was better than ever. We purchased another apartment complex. Started construction on a mixed-use development downtown. Our employee count passed 100. Then, one afternoon, Sophia knocked on my office door. I thought you'd like to know. She handed me a file. Ethan had accepted the warehouse job. Olivia had been hired by the customer service company. Most importantly, their rent payments were now arriving on time every month. I smiled. Not because they owed me money. Because they were finally standing on their own feet. Several weeks later, I received a handwritten envelope. Inside was a short letter. Daniel. You didn't give us money. You gave us a chance to earn our own. I don't expect forgiveness. But thank you for showing more character than we ever showed you. Ethan and Olivia. I folded the letter and placed it inside my desk drawer. Not as a reminder of betrayal, but as proof that people could face the consequences of their choices. And still choose to become better. A year passed faster than I expected. Hayes Development Group had become one of the most respected development companies in the region. We weren't the biggest, but we had earned something far more valuable than size. Trust. Investors trusted us. Employees trusted us. Tenants trusted us. That reputation mattered more than any award hanging on my office wall. One Friday afternoon, Marcus walked into my office carrying 2 cups of coffee. Remember when this company was just you, me, and a second-hand desk? I laughed. And a conference table that wobbled every time someone leaned on it. He grinned. We've come a long way. We stood by the window overlooking our newest project, a neighborhood that had once been abandoned, now filled with families walking their children home from school. This, Marcus said quietly, is why we started. He was right. It had never been about proving Olivia wrong. Or beating Ethan. It had been about building something that would outlast all of us. A few weeks later, our company hosted an open house celebrating the completion of another apartment community. Residents, local officials, business partners, and employees filled the courtyard. As I finished thanking everyone for believing in our vision, I noticed 2 familiar faces standing near the back. Ethan. And Olivia. They waited until the crowd had almost disappeared before walking over. Ethan extended his hand. This time, I shook it. I wanted to tell you something in person, he said. I was promoted last month. Congratulations. He smiled, a genuine smile, not the confident grin I remembered from years ago. I earned it. I know you did. Olivia spoke next. I've started taking evening classes. What are you studying? Property management. I couldn't hide my smile. That's a good choice. She laughed softly. I figured I should finally learn how the business actually works. For the first time in our lives, there was no resentment between us. Just 3 adults who had taken very different roads to reach the same lesson. Before leaving, Ethan paused. You know. I used to think success meant having more than someone else. He looked around at the families enjoying the new community. Now I think success is being able to sleep at night. I nodded. I agree. After they left, Marcus joined me outside. So. Any regrets? I looked at the sunset reflecting off the buildings our team had restored. The same city where I had once believed my life was over. The same city where everything had actually begun. No, I answered. If they'd never betrayed me, I probably would have stayed comfortable. I would have kept waiting for the perfect moment. Losing everything forced me to become the man I was always capable of being. Marcus smiled. I think your father would be proud. So do I. Sometimes people ask whether I ever truly forgave my ex-wife and my former best friend. The answer is simple. Forgiveness wasn't something I gave them. It was something I gave myself. Because carrying bitterness is like paying interest on someone else's mistake. The day I let it go, I finally became free. And that's the funny thing about life. My best friend married my ex-wife. Neither of them expected me to become their landlord. But in the end, that wasn't the greatest twist. The greatest twist was realizing that the happiest ending wasn't watching them lose. It was discovering that I had already won the moment I stopped living for revenge and started living for myself.